Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So, let's talk about that glowing rectangle in your hand or the screen you are staring at right now. We all know artificial intelligence is the shiny new king of the tech world, right? Wall Street is absolutely obsessed with it. It feels like every single company on the planet is trying to slap AI onto their product, even if it is just a toaster. And for the past couple of years, the playbook for investors has been dead simple. You just buy NVIDIA, sit back, and watch the numbers go up. It has been the ultimate gold rush, and NVIDIA was selling the finest shovels in town. But here is the thing about gold rushes. Eventually, you have so many people digging in the same spot that the entire mountain starts to shake. And right now, the tech world is running headfirst into a massive, invisible brick wall. It is not a lack of code, it is not a lack of smart engineers, and it is not even a shortage of microchips. It is something much more old school, something that dates back to Thomas Edison. We are running out of raw, unadulterated electricity. Think about it this way. Imagine you just bought the most powerful state-of-the-art sports car on Earth. It is sleek, it is terrifyingly fast, and it cost you a fortune. You track it all the way to your house. You sit in the driver's seat, you turn the key, and nothing happens. Why? Because you live in a neighborhood where the electrical grid can only handle a golf cart. And the moment you step on the gas, you blow out the transformers for 3 entire blocks. That is exactly what is happening behind the closed doors of those massive tech conglomerates right now. Every single time ChatGPT answers a question or a new AI model generates a video, it drinks energy, like a dehydrated marathon runner in the middle of Death Valley. We are talking about data centers that require more power than entire mid-sized American cities. And the current power grid? Well, it is held together by wishful thinking and infrastructure built decades ago. So, what does the smart money do when the shovel makers hit a wall? They stop looking at the shovels and they start looking at the power plants. Today, we are going deep into the real bottleneck of the tech revolution. Forget the software, forget the algorithms. We are talking about the massive energy crisis looming over Silicon Valley and why the next millionaires won't be tech bros writing code, but the people who figure out how to keep the lights on. We are diving into the wild world of independent power producers. The sudden, shocking resurrection of nuclear energy, and the tiny reactors that might just save the future of technology. Grab your coffee, turn up the volume, and let's get into it. All right, let us kick things off with part 1 of this puzzle. To really grasp where the smart money is moving, we have to understand the sheer mind-boggling scale of the physical roadblock we are hitting. And to do that, we are taking a trip to Northern Virginia, specifically Loudoun County. If you know the tech industry, you know exactly what I am talking about. This place is affectionately and sometimes nervously known as Data Center Alley. It routes an absolutely insane percentage of the entire world's internet traffic every single day. If the internet has a physical heart, it is beating in Loudoun County. Now I want you to step into a specific pair of shoes for a second. Imagine you are a senior city planner working in Loudoun County right now. You are sitting at your desk on a random Tuesday, sipping your lukewarm coffee, and a delegation from a trillion-dollar tech giant walks into your office. They have these sleek presentations and they say, "Hey, we want to build a brand new state-of-the-art campus for our latest artificial intelligence model." At first glance, it sounds amazing for the local economy, right? Jobs, tax revenue, prestige. But then, you flip to the page detailing their power requirements. They are not asking for a typical commercial energy hookup. They are casually asking for a gigawatt. 1 full gigawatt of dedicated power. To put that into human terms, that is the equivalent of powering a city of roughly 800,000 homes. Just for one facility. You look at your current grid infrastructure, you look at the local power company's capacity, and you have to look these tech executives dead in the eye and say, "Guys, we literally do not have the electrons to give you." And this is not some doomsday science fiction scenario. This is happening across the country right now. Major utilities are having to tell the biggest, wealthiest companies on Earth that they have to wait until 2026, 2028, or even 2030 just to get hooked up to the grid. The transmission lines simply cannot handle the load without melting. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. I can hear the tech optimists out there shouting at their steering wheels or yelling while they do the dishes. You are saying, "Come on, technology always gets more efficient. Look at our smartphones. The chips get smaller, the batteries last longer, the software gets leaner. Surely the brilliant minds at NVIDIA and AMD will just manufacture more power-efficient AI chips, right? And hey, you are not entirely wrong. The latest generation of silicon is incredibly efficient compared to the last generation. But here is the massive, unavoidable elephant in the room. Those efficiency gains are being completely swallowed whole by the exponential growth in the size of the models themselves. It is a classic economic concept called Jevons paradox. William Stanley Jevons was an economist who noticed that when steam engines became more efficient with coal consumption did not go down. It actually went up, because the technology became so profitable that everyone started using it everywhere. We are seeing the exact same thing with artificial intelligence. The more efficient we make the microchips, the larger and more complex the large language models become, and the more thousands of chips we string together in these giant server farms. We are no longer just running a slightly smarter search engine. We are trying to simulate complex human reasoning across trillions of parameters. So no, waiting for chip efficiency to save the day is like trying to empty the ocean with a slightly larger teacup. It is not going to fix the core problem. To really get a grip on how this changes the investment landscape, we need to look backward. Let us rewind the clock to the early 20th century, specifically looking at the absolute explosion of the aluminum industry. Back then, extracting and manufacturing aluminum from raw bauxite was a revolutionary technology. It was going to change aviation, construction, everything. But the smelting process required an absolutely obscene amount of electricity. It was so power-hungry that these aluminum companies could not just build their factories in New York or Chicago, where the financial capital was. They physically could not get the juice. So what did they do? They had to pack up and move out to the Pacific Northwest. They built their massive smelters right next to the brand-new, gigantic hydroelectric dams on the Columbia River. They had to follow the power. The energy source dictated where the industry could even exist. Fast forward to today, and AI data centers are the new aluminum smelters. The tech giants are waking up to a harsh reality. They can no longer just build data centers wherever land is cheap or where the fiber optic cables happen to meet. They have to build them where the power is abundant, reliable, and ready to go. And that fundamental shift is completely flipping the script on how Wall Street values old-school energy assets. Suddenly, the boring utility companies and power plants are holding all the cards. So we have established that the tech world is absolutely starving for electricity, and they have to go where the power is. But here is where the story gets really wild, and where the smart money is making some of the most aggressive moves we have seen in a decade. We are not just talking about tapping into the regular grid anymore. We are talking about the sudden, almost unbelievable resurrection of the most controversial energy source on the planet. Yes, we are talking about nuclear power. To really understand how crazy this pivot is, I want you to imagine a highly specific scenario. Put yourself in the shoes of a chief financial officer at a legacy independent power production company. Let us say it is the year 2022. For the past 20 years, your job has been as boring as watching paint dry. You manage a fleet of power plants, maybe a couple of aging nuclear reactors built back in the 1980s. Your stock price barely moves. You are viewed by Wall Street as a slow, sleepy dividend play for retirees. Then fast forward to today. Your phone rings. It is not your regional grid operator. It is the executive team from a $2 trillion Silicon Valley tech behemoth. And they do not want to negotiate a standard power purchase agreement. They want to buy the entire electrical output of your nuclear plant for the next 20 years. Or better yet, they want to buy the land right next to the reactor so they do not even have to use the public transmission lines. Overnight, you go from being a boring utility manager to holding the most valuable, highly coveted asset in the modern digital economy. Now, I know what some of you are screaming at your podcast app right now. You are saying, wait a minute, what about renewable energy? Some analysts and environmental policymakers are constantly arguing that the solution to AI's energy appetite is completely green. They say just build more massive solar farms in the desert. Put wind turbines up and down the coast. Renewable energy is cheaper to install now than it has ever been in human history. And look, they are absolutely right about the installation costs of solar panels. But let us look at the cold, hard reality of an AI data center. A data center training a massive language model does not take a break. It needs to run at 100% capacity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It requires what the energy industry calls baseload power. The problem with solar and wind is intermittency. The sun goes down every single night. The wind stops blowing, and grid-scale battery storage, while improving, is nowhere near the capacity needed to back up a gigawatt data center for days at a time. If a data center loses power for even a fraction of a second, you are not just dimming the lights, you are potentially corrupting millions of dollars worth of machine learning computations. You need absolute bulletproof reliability. And right now, the only carbon-free energy source on the planet that can deliver massive, uninterrupted baseload power is nuclear. If you want to see how this plays out in the markets, we have a perfect historical parallel to look back on. Let us rewind to the late 1990s during the height of the dot-com bubble. Everyone and their mother was throwing money at any startup that ended in .com. People were buying shares of dog food delivery websites thinking they were going to revolutionize retail. But behind the scenes, the actual foundation of the internet was incredibly fragile. The real bottleneck was not the software, it was the bandwidth. It was the physical pipes carrying the data. The companies that made absolute fortunes, the true picks and shovels of that era, were the telecommunications infrastructure companies, the ones laying thousands of miles of fiber optic glass cables across the ocean floor. Today, the independent power producers are the new fiber optic cable layers. Companies that own merchant nuclear plants are suddenly the belles of the ball. And this is not just speculation, the ink is already drying on the contracts. Look at what Amazon Web Services did recently in Pennsylvania. They did not just sign a contract for power. They literally bought a massive 650-megawatt data center campus that sits directly adjacent to the Susquehanna nuclear power plant. They bought it from Talon Energy, an independent power producer. This is a concept called going behind the meter. Amazon is plugging their servers directly into the nuclear reactor, completely bypassing the local power grid, the regulatory wait times, and the transmission bottlenecks. When that deal was announced, a shockwave went through Wall Street. Investors suddenly realized that existing nuclear power plants are basically finite, irreplaceable gold mines. You cannot just build a new nuclear plant in a year. Because of regulations, permitting, and construction costs, it takes a decade or more. So the ones that already exist, their value is skyrocketing. The stock prices of companies like Constellation Energy and Vistra have been going absolutely parabolic because the market has finally connected the dots. If you want to own a piece of the AI revolution today, you might want to stop looking at Silicon Valley and start looking at the cooling towers in Pennsylvania and Texas. All right, so we have talked about the immediate scramble. Tech giants are buying up the power from existing, legacy nuclear plants like it is the last drop of water in the desert. But let us be real for a second. There are only so many of those massive older nuclear facilities to go around. It is a strictly finite resource. So, what happens when the music stops, all the existing reactors are spoken for, and AI models are still doubling in size every 6 months? This is where the story shifts from just buying up old assets to frantically inventing the future of energy. And the ultimate holy grail the smart money is betting on right now is a little 3-letter acronym SMR, Small Modular Reactors. To grasp why this is such a massive paradigm shift, I want you to step into the incredibly expensive Italian leather shoes of a Silicon Valley tech billionaire for a moment. Imagine you are the CEO of a red-hot artificial intelligence company. You just raised $10 billion. You have the absolute smartest software engineers on the planet on your payroll, and you are ready to build a data center that will change human history. But then, your project grinds to a devastating halt. Why? Because the local utility company, which moves at the speed of molasses, tells you they cannot give you the power you need until the year 2032. What do? If you are a fiercely competitive tech titan, you do not just politely wait in line. You decide to take matters into your own hands. You decide to become your own power company. But you also do not want to deal with the political nightmare and the 15-year timeline of building a massive traditional nuclear plant with those giant concrete cooling towers in someone's backyard. You want something sleek? You want a reactor that you can basically order from a factory, ship on a flatbed truck, assemble on site like a giant, highly radioactive piece of IKEA furniture, and plug directly into your servers. That is exactly what a small modular reactor is designed to be. It is nuclear power, miniaturized, standardized, and mass-produced. Now I can already hear the seasoned energy sector veterans scoffing through the speakers. They are furiously drafting an angry tweet right now saying, SMRs are a complete and utter fantasy. They will tell you to look at NewScale, the poster child for SMR technology in the United States. NewScale had a flagship project planned for Idaho, backed by the government, and they had to completely cancel it late last year because the projected costs spiraled out of control. The skeptics argue that nuclear power is simply too complex and too heavily regulated to ever be cheap or modular. And you know what? Historically, those skeptics have been absolutely right. The graveyard of ambitious next-generation energy startups is vast and full of empty promises. But let us look at the actual data and the shifting capital structure of today, because this time, the rules of the game have fundamentally changed. It is no longer just sluggish government agencies trying to fund these projects with complex bureaucratic grants. The tech billionaires who created this massive energy demand are now opening their own personal bottomless checkbooks to solve it. You have Bill Gates pouring billions of his own fortune into a company called TerraPower, which is currently breaking ground on a next-generation reactor in Wyoming. You have Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, heavily backing an advanced microreactor company called Oklo, and he is trying to take it public. When the very people who desperately need the electricity start vertically integrating and brute-forcing the innovation with their own billions, the traditional timelines get thrown out the window. They are treating nuclear physics like a software engineering problem: move fast, throw money at it, and iterate. To really put this massive infrastructure pivot into perspective, we have to look back at the 1860s and the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Back then, the United States had a booming industrialized economy on the East Coast and incredible untapped riches waiting in California. But between those two hubs was thousands of miles of absolutely nothing but harsh, impassable terrain. You could not just breed faster horses or build better wagons to cross it. The existing technology had hit a hard physical limit. To unlock that next era of massive economic growth, they had to fundamentally alter the landscape. They had to lay down millions of tons of iron rails and wooden ties. It required unprecedented coordination between private magnates and government backing to build the tracks before the real, long-term economic boom could even begin. Right now, in the 2020s, electrical grid infrastructure and these next-generation modular reactors are the iron tracks of the AI revolution. And it is not just about the reactors themselves. Think about the broader grid. The United States electrical grid is essentially an antique grandfather clock that is suddenly being asked to run a modern smartphone operating system. It is being held together by duct tape and transformers that are decades past their expiration date. This is why we are seeing a massive silent boom in the commodities and heavy manufacturing sectors. Even if we perfectly deploy thousands of small nuclear reactors or build 1 million new solar panels, all of those electrons still have to travel over wires. This means the companies that mine copper, the factories that build high voltage, electrical transformers, and the specialized engineering firms that upgrade transmission lines are sitting on the edge of a generational supercycle. Wall Street knows that before we can get to the futuristic utopia of artificial general intelligence, we have to dig a whole lot of metal out of the ground and rebuild the bones of the country. The sexy software might be what gets the magazine covers, but the dirty, heavy industrial hardware is where the quiet fortunes are being made right now. All right, let us bring it all together and wrap this up. We have covered some serious ground today. We started by looking at the massive, power-hungry data centers that are causing total gridlock in places like Virginia. We watched the smartest, wealthiest tech companies on Earth suddenly pivot to buying up decades-old nuclear power plants just to keep their servers running. And finally, we mapped out the absolute monumental multi-billion-dollar industrial undertaking that is about to happen as we try to upgrade our aging power grid with small modular reactors and mountains of new copper wire. So, what is the real, actionable takeaway for you? You are driving to work. You are walking the dog. You are trying to figure out how to position your own portfolio or just understand where the economy is actually heading. Here is the expert insight you need to lock in regarding this entire AI power struggle. Wall Street is incredibly prone to shiny object syndrome. When everyone is staring directly at the dazzling light of a brand new, magical artificial intelligence model, they go temporarily blind to the heavy, unglamorous lifting happening in the shadows. The real generational wealth created over the next 10 years might not come from successfully guessing which software startup is going to beat ChatGPT. The odds are stacked against you there. Instead, the real asymmetric bet is looking at the foundation. It is looking at the companies that manufacture high-voltage circuit breakers, the specialized engineering firms that lay transmission lines, or the commodities funds that are stacking up industrial metals. Think of it like this. You do not need to be the superstar quarterback to make an absolute fortune in professional sports. You do not need to be on the field taking the hits. Sometimes, the most brilliant business move you can make is just being the person who owns the exclusive rights to sell. Bottled water in a packed stadium in the middle of a brutal July heat wave. The tech giants in Silicon Valley are incredibly thirsty right now. They are running a marathon at a sprint pace, and they are willing to pay an absolute unprecedented premium to anyone who can hand them a bottle of water. Your job as an investor or just a savvy observer of the market is to find the water boys. Find the infrastructure. Find the power. That is going to do it for today's deep dive. I hope this gave you a totally different perspective on the AI boom and where the smart money is actually flowing. If this episode gave you a light bulb moment, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and share this episode with that one friend who will not stop talking about his tech stock portfolio. It really helps the show grow so we can keep bringing you these deep dives. Until next time, keep your eyes open, stay curious, and we will catch you in the next episode.